Okay, it is recording. I was waiting for the recording sound, but it is recording. Okay. I'm here with Garret Biss. How you doing, Garret?
I'm doing well, Maddie. Thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I've been looking forward to this. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. And I watched your TED Talk. It was very interesting and very engaging. And I look forward to this conversation. And for the people listening, why don't you just give a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Certainly. So my name's Garret Biss. I'm a retired United States Marine pilot. I had an opportunity to serve for almost 17 years in the Marine Corps and took an early retirement after 17 years. And since then, I've done a lot of work in the personal development space, specifically looking at addiction recovery has been a primary focus of mine. So I understand, and I'm sure we'll have time to kind of peel this apart, but I understand addiction as a manifestation or as a behavior that becomes somebody's temporary or maladaptive solution to deal with some pain that's inside of them. I don't think that addiction, a substance or behavior itself, is something that's bad. I think the relationship a person has with it is bad. So I kind of found a journey. I don't know, followed the stars, I guess, and found a path into doing some great work in the addiction recovery space. And then, as I mentioned in the TEDx talk, so my primary focus recently has been dealing with veterans and looking at some of the challenges that veterans face, specifically when they transition from military service. But there's also a lot of ways that that challenge that veterans face in transition is something that shows up in a lot of people's lives, even non-veterans' lives, as we look at some of those core needs or some of the challenges and where they come from and how the human experience is, it's similar for all of us. We all have basic, human needs and wants and challenges, and some things get upset or frustrated at times. And that's similar kind of across the spectrum of especially of men in our society.
Right. Very interesting. Okay. So in terms of addiction, how did you get into working with people with addiction? Did you experience it yourself, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I'd certainly had a chapter. I mean, long periods of my life, some where I was overusing certain substances and behaviors, and then times where the real challenge began, where I was using certain substances or behaviors as a means to emotionally and mentally survive. And that's really what I think addiction is it's seeking for, reaching for a substance or behavior in order to relieve some temporary pain or in order to experience some kind of pleasure. And the challenge with when something becomes, in my understanding, when something becomes, an addiction or a problem that should possibly be addressed, is when it's creating a negative consequence in your life that you wish you could get away from, but you don't have the means within yourself or the means with whatever the tools that you're working with in order to heal that solution or deal with those negative consequences. So, and I think about it that way. A lot of this is influenced by the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, and he really helped me understand that that addiction manifests in any behavior that a person craves, finds temporary relief or pleasure in, has a negative consequence because of, and yet has difficulty giving it up. I love that definition because it helps me see and understand how a wide variety or a wide spectrum of substances or behaviors can become troublesome in somebody's life. It's not this arbitrarily short list of substances that we think of many times as the addictive substances, but it can be anything. It can be something that we think is more benign. The defining factor is whether it's creating a negative consequence and somebody has a challenge giving it up. And I think that's important because, especially working with individuals that have struggled with an addiction, or for somebody that's going through a journey and they have a substance or a behavior that's really taken over their life, it's important to understand that that is a solution to a problem. It of itself is not a problem. Of course, it's a solution that creates more problems in your life as you continue to rely on a substance or behavior. But I think that it's very important to see it that way, because when somebody moves beyond a substance or a behavior that they've been relying on, if they don't get to the root problem, if they don't get to the source of the pain or the void inside that they were trying to fill or numb, then it's too likely that another substance or behavior will come in and take its place. So somebody is relying on a substance or behavior because there's something inside of them, or there's some pain or struggle that they're dealing with. a long-term journey in recovery needs to be one that gets to addressing that core wound or that core pain, so that somebody doesn't just move from one substance or behavior to another one.
Was addiction in your life, did that come transitioning from the military?
It showed up differently then, and fortunately, I mean, my story. So when I transitioned from the Marines, I got in such a dark place where I was really scared. I felt a huge wound inside, or a huge void inside, and I recognized that some substances that might have been more benign at previous times in my life were now becoming more troublesome. And fortunately, I had this kind of this realization that I was standing atop a very slippery slope. So I was almost scared into removing some substances from my life before it got worse, because I realized how effective they were. I mean, alcohol is my primary indulgence. And I realized how effective that was at helping me deal with the pain and the troubles in the moment, putting worries and things out of my mind. And I realized that it was also the negative consequence of that was many negative consequences, but primarily the inability to then re-engage and reconnect and take corrective actions or positive actions to move to a better place, or to kind of move out of that. Fortunately, I was introduced to the work of a mentor of mine named Jack Canfield. And through some of the work that I did with him, he helped me start to understand where that void was, and then also help me fill that void. And I'm sure we'll jump into it a little bit in a little bit, but primarily the primary benefit that I got from being introduced to his work was being reconnected with myself, finding a sense of connection to a worthwhile version of myself that was inside. Through some of the challenges and through some of the behaviors, I had been separated from that. And this was really exacerbated by being separated, or by retiring from the military, is being disconnected from a version of myself that I liked, a version of myself that I really knew or understood. And that was a big part of creating that void inside that I sought to escape from, or sought to numb.
So it sounds like there's a real loss of identity, and I'm sure you can speak to not only yourself but other people that you work with transitioning out of the military, but there's a real loss of identity and probably connection.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. With the connection piece, I mean, the connection that veterans often experience while they're in the military, it's a type or a level of connection that a lot of other individuals don't experience. When we talk about connection in the military, we talk about being willing to sacrifice for one another, being willing to go into hardship, whether it's a hard and challenging training environment, or ultimately whether it's a combat situation, where you're willing to put your safety and your well-being on the line, not just for your friends and the family and the country that you're serving, but for the brothers and sisters that are serving there with you. When you depart from the military, that's a level of connection or a depth of connection that's not often experienced. And there's a tremendous loss that comes with that. And then there's a whole identity piece that's wrapped up in that, which makes it challenging to replace or find new kind of connection. I know when I took that uniform off for the last time, I lost a sense of who I was. I knew who I was as a service member. I knew who I was in the role that I had in the military, but I take that off, and there was certainly a searching period to figure out who the heck I was without that uniform. And there's a lot of challenges that come with that, especially when your identity is kind of picked up, and your identity is built on this foundation of who you are and what you do. When you take that away, it kind of really challenges that foundation that you have for understanding yourself, and then understanding the connections that you can develop with other people.
Who were you in the military? Like, when you think about that identity of yourself, I'm curious about that. Like, would you say that you're this rank, you're capable of this is how you fit into the bigger picture, you're and then all the sort of mindset that goes along with it, like I will sacrifice myself for my team. Like, are these all the things that are kind of wrapped up into your identity? So, like things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it, is just understanding. So I talk about, or I think about a lot, this I don't know a better phrase for it other than a dichotomous ego. And by this, I mean, we have in the military, especially in the Marine Corps, what I experienced was there's this certain character that's really ingrained in us as we start with basic training or as we go through officer candidate school. There's this image and this impression that's put upon us that we are the strongest, most capable, most lethal fighting force in the world. And this is something we certainly take pride in. We know that we're ingrained with this thought that we're better, faster, stronger, smarter than any foe, and then a lot of the other non-service members that are part of our community. And this has a way of lifting us up and building up our ego and giving us the confidence that we need to go forth and do the job that we need to do. There's certainly a place for that. At the same time, I also recall and felt all of the time that I wasn't good enough, that I should be striving. I mean, there's ultra competitive nature in the military and always striving to be a little bit faster, do some more pull-ups, be a little bit smarter, get that promotion faster than your peers. So there's always this drive inside that I need to continue to refine myself, continue to grow, continue to learn more, and continue to be better. So the challenge is when you get out of the military, you have this one part of your ego, this one part of your identity that's lifting you up because you're part of, as you put on this uniform, you're representing something that's so strong, so capable. And you have this other part of your ego that's kind of holding you down and saying you should be better. Well, when you separate from the military, you take off that uniform, you're losing that uplifting power, that uplifting part of your identity that says that you are, that you do have worth, you do have value, you have so much strength, so much capability, but you don't lose that voice inside that says that you should be better, that you should do more, that you're not deserving, that you're not suffering enough, that you're not making enough of a sacrifice. And so that's a big challenge, releasing that or losing that part of your identity. The other thing that comes with that identity as a service member is a very strong sense of meaning. And I understand meaning not just as something that's good that provides us kind of direction and clarity and helps us engage in our best. That's certainly a part of having a strong sense of meaning. But what I've learned is that meaning, as Dr. Viktor Frankl talks about in the study of logotherapy, which is the study of a person's will to meaning, is that meaning also provides our capacity to endure suffering. If we have a very strong sense of meaning in what we're doing, then we can endure more sacrifice, we can endure more challenge. If we lose that sense of meaning, then we're also losing that capacity to endure the hard times. And for everybody in life, you're going to have hard and challenging times. Things are going to come up that you have to deal with. If you've lost that sense of meaning that you've brought with your identity and with the purpose that you had or the role that you had in the military, you lose that sense of meaning. You've also lost that capacity to deal with the hard times as they come up. And it's a very hard and challenging time when you transition out of the military for the many other reasons.
Yeah, imagine going and working at an accounting office after all that would be
Yeah.
pretty big.
Well, that's a big part of it too. I mean, I've talked to you. Absolutely. And that's a big challenge also for individuals that leave the military and go find another job somewhere they often feel very underutilized. They look at the responsibilities, they look at all that they were capable of. I mean, when I was in my early 30s, 31, 32 years old, they would toss me the keys to an aircraft and give me 5 or 6 guys, and I'd go fly around the world. I'd fly a plane to California. I'd fly a plane over to Europe. That's the level of responsibility and capability that you have when you leave that. And now if you're working in like a retail position where you've got to, make sure that the shelves are stocked in a certain way, or, you're responsible for creating some spreadsheets for, to track something in your company that can, I've talked to a lot of veterans. They're like, man, I feel so underutilized and maybe underappreciated in the same regard, but not just underappreciated from their peers or their coworkers, but underappreciating themselves because they don't, because they're not operating to their full capacity. And when we're not, when we know that we have more potential that we're not leaning into or that we're not demonstrating, then that further kind of erodes that sense of positive identity.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's such a different world, like flying all around the world. Just the responsibility of having a plane and then you're just thrown into a job. Like that's a very interesting example. I couldn't imagine the difference between the worlds there.
Yeah, and it's it could be a certainly abrupt change, and I think it's the abrupt nature of that and not being prepared for that is that fuels a lot of that challenge. And like I said, these aren't just challenges that that veterans experience, but anybody as you move from one a role or one identity to another, whether it's leaving university, leaving college, whether it's having a career for 10 or 12 years and then leaving and finding another one, or whether it's just moving. Maybe you're moving to a new community or a new country for a position that you have. There's so many of these things that are wrapped up, that sense of connection, that sense of authenticity, that sense of meaning in what you're doing. All of these things can be disrupted. And as those things are disrupted, this is really our foundation for well-being and mental health. If those things are disrupted, then it's going to take some work to either regain that, recognize what's being lost, recognize some of the symptoms or the effects that it's having in your life, and then find ways to replace that or move forward beyond that.
So where do you start? Where do you start, whether you're, you know, transitioning from the military or transitioning a phase of life? Where have you seen?
Yeah, I think the first is just with the recognition. So this is the main message or the main mission of my TEDx talk, was just to share this message about an understanding of the foundation for well-being that we have through the connections that we have, through our authenticity, our permission to be authentic, and through that sense of meaning. Just understanding that. So we, as human beings, we require connection. It's hardwired into our bodies. We're tribal creatures. We do our best. We show up our best. We make our best contribution when we're part of a tribe, when we're part of a community. It's so hardwired into us that we even have, functions in our body and our emotional operating system in our brain that help us connect at an emotional and mental level with those people that are around us. If you've ever seen somebody, whether it's somebody hurt on an athletic field, and you cringe a little bit when you see that, or if you see somebody that falls off their bike or something and you feel yourself cringe, there's parts of our body, our mirror neurons in our body, that help us connect at a level to feel the emotions or feel what somebody else is experiencing. This is something that's ingrained in, or something that's part of our hardwiring to help foster that connection. Also, as I've experienced and often share, even doing something as simple as smiling with somebody or laughing with somebody or sharing a long, nurturing hug with somebody. These things release oxytocin in our body, which is a main way that we deal with the buildup of cortisol or the buildup of adrenaline in our body. So these stress hormones that serve a purpose and help us function in certain periods of time, unfortunately, in our lifestyle, we can experience those elevated periods of stress in our life for too long. And one of the ways that we can overcome that is through a strong sense of connection. So connection is extremely important. Along with connection also comes our strong need for authenticity, or that positive identity. We need to have the confidence and permission to show up as we are, and show up at, share what we think, ask for what we need, share, how we're feeling, and feel and know that we'll not jeopardize or lose that sense of connection. I'm sure, there's many times everybody's experienced a time where they've shown up maybe in a new environment and they've felt that they need to show up as a version of themselves. Maybe you're showing up for a job interview and you need to, put on a certain presentation and act a certain way, you think, in order to be accepted or in order to be enough. Maybe it's on a first date or early in a relationship where you're showing up, putting your best foot forward, to say, just so that you can kind of show up as that part of yourself. Well, the challenge is, if we show up inauthentically, if we feel like we need to wear a mask in order to be accepted, if we feel like there's things that we feel or that we're thinking that we can't share because other people will think differently of us, or we might jeopardize that connection, what we often do is we'll hide a certain part of ourselves. Anybody who's experienced trauma or really challenging times, there's this tendency to hide that. What we can come to this thought that, what are they going to think about me if they knew what I really wanted, or what really happened to me, or what I really experienced earlier in my life. Any of those times that we feel like we need to hide a part of ourselves behind a mask in order to maintain that connection, there's two consequences of that. Is one, people aren't connecting with us. They're connecting with the masks that we're wearing. So we don't even receive the full benefit of that connection. If anything, we'll get connection, but it's coming with an increase in anxiety or stress because we're afraid, what if they find out what I'm hiding? What if they find out what I really am thinking, or what I really want, or how I really am? So we don't get the full benefit of that connection. And at the same time, if we have to put on a mask in order to be accepted, so we think, in order to be accepted by our surroundings, then we're also giving ourselves a message that we're not good enough as we are, that somehow we're defective, somehow we're not worthy of that connection, or we're not worthy of the acceptance of others. So that has a negative consequence. And as we can imagine, the more that we do that, the more that we show up inauthentically, or unsure of our identity such that we're showing up as we think we need to show up or think we need to act in order to be accepted, that continues to erode our sense of self-confidence and our sense of self-worth. So one of the first places to start is to, one, reconnect with ourselves. There's a part of our human nature, part of our hardwiring, unfortunately, is negatively biased in the way that we see things or the way that we remember things, especially when we're thinking about things that we've done. So it's very easy for us to typically remember mistakes that we've made, things that we wish we would have done differently, things that we, times that we messed up, times that we, that we failed to follow through or failed somebody, in some capacity. We always remember those mistakes, so we tend to remember those mistakes much more than we remember the times that we succeeded, the times that we did the right thing, the times that we got an A on the test, the times that we really showed up. And the reason for this is the mistakes that we've made in the past, these could be future threats. So if we don't remember them, if we don't correct those behaviors or those actions in the future, then that could be a threat to our connection. That could be a threat to our survival, our success, whatever that is. So I understand that our brain, our mind has a tendency to recall and remember those things that we want to correct, those mistakes that we've made. Unfortunately, the nature of this is if all we think about are the things that we wish we would have done differently or that we were better at, or the defects that we have or the mistakes that we made in the past, this doesn't do much to build up our sense of self-confidence and our sense of self-worth. The good thing is that intentionally, with some intention and with some purpose, we can remind ourselves of the good things that we've done. One of the first things I do when I'm working with somebody, especially somebody in addiction recovery, is to make a list of all the wins and successes that you've had in your life. Now, maybe not everything, but let's come up with a sizable list of 50 or 100 things, wins and successes that you've had. Because again, our tendency of our mind is to forget these things or to downplay that or to minimize those successes that we've had. So with some intention, we can bring that more into our focus. And I call it giving credit where credit is due. So if we're going to remember the mistake that we made last week, then why don't we remember the wins or the successes that we've had along the way? And I don't care how old you are and how much you've messed up in your life, you can come up with a list of 100 wins and successes of good things that you've done in your life. The times that you either learned a new skill, learned how to walk, learned how to ride a bike, got an A on a test, passed third grade, passed university. There's a long list of things. And if you can bring that into your awareness, then this helps feed that sense of confidence, that helps feed that sense of self-worth. So therefore, not only do you recognize your true value and the worth that you have, but oftentimes you're willing to do things good for yourself. I work with a lot of people in addiction recovery, and because they're so focused on all the mistakes they made, all the heartache they've caused, all the pain that they've created in other people's lives, sometimes they'll get to a place where they don't even think they deserve happiness. They don't deserve joy. They don't deserve success. And if you feel that you don't deserve something good, then you're not able to take those actions in order to create that growth or that progress in your life.
So like, I'm a piece of crap anyway, so I don't even deserve to, kind of get my life together and have a good life because I've done
That's
so many
right.
bad things. Why should I even bother kind of getting it all
Right.
together now?
And whether you consciously think that or not, if that program is operating in your mind, then it's going to affect the way that you engage, the way that you show up, the things that you're willing to do for yourself. If you think that you're a piece of crap and you don't deserve anything good, then are you going to eat healthy foods? Are you going to exercise? Are you going to, continue to learn? Are you going to, feel that you deserve that next promotion? It's unlikely. So, and that's a pathway to an even darker or worse place.
I really like what you said about say what you think and ask for what you need. I think that's huge for being authentic. Like if we're not
Mm,
saying what we think, like I think we've all been in situations where we have something on our mind we'd like to say and contribute, or how we really feel about something, and we just don't share. And it's like and I think the more that you keep that in, like kind of what you're saying, the
mm.
less authentic you're being, and the more you're just wearing a mask, not saying what you're thinking.
Right. Especially if somebody's hurt you or somebody's embarrassed you or something, something's come up and or you have a good idea or you have something that you want to contribute at work, but you're too afraid to say anything because you don't want to be seen in a different way. The whole time that you're holding that inside, you're giving yourself the message that your voice isn't valuable enough or that you're not deserving of whatever positive might come from that. And we can see how both of these things can kind of play together. If you don't feel that you're deserving of good things, then maybe you have a good idea and you're not willing to share it. Or somebody's acting or treating you in a certain way that's making you feel bad, but you don't feel that you're worth feeling good. So therefore you don't say it, you don't bring it up. You know, a lot of people stay in bad, unfortunately bad situations, especially if they get to the place where they feel that they don't deserve to be treated better by those that are around them.
Right. 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 Sort of that loop where yeah, I'm being treated bad, but I don't deserve to be treated good.
And then it can be a downward spiral that just gets, you know, to a worse and worse place.
And asking for what you need too. I think that's a huge one. You know, I'm just thinking of myself, and it must be probably everybody else. Like, you just, when you don't ask, you put yourself last, you put everybody else first.
Which,
And
you know, and we all want to be of service. It feels good to help other people out and to support other people. And if we're feeling that we're not deserving of that help ourselves, you know, I think of this term of responsible benevolence. So it feels great to be of service and to provide good things to other people, but we can only do that to a certain extent. You know, I think of the story of the giving tree. Are you familiar with that story, the giving tree? So there's this, you
no,
know, it's a child story, a child's book, and the premise of the story is this little kid befriends a tree, and he keeps going back to the tree anytime he needs something. So when he was young, he would swing from the tree branches. When he got a little older, he needed some money, so he took all the apples from the tree and went and sold them. And then he got a little older and he needed a house to build, so he cut all the branches off the tree so he could go build a house. And then the boy goes away for a long period of time, finally comes back when he's a lot older to the tree, which is now just a stump in the ground because that tree gave everything of itself to the boy anytime he needed something. And now the only thing he has to offer is, you know, a stump in the ground. I used to think that was a beautiful story of reminding us that there's always more that we can give and do and be of service. But recently I realized, no, it's a message of how much less we can do if we give too much. Like if we give to the point that it's an unrepairable cost to us, then it really affects our ability to give and show up and be of service in the future. And some people, you know, will find themselves in a trap where they don't feel great about themselves. So they always need that external validation, or they need to feel that they're being of service in order to, you know, and sometimes people confuse service and sacrifice. You know, you can be of service and not sacrificing something, or, you know, sacrificing something that it's going to take an unrepairable cost from you. And if we lean in that, if we're in that too much or too long, then it just continues to erode us. And maybe we don't have anything else to give. You see a lot of this, unfortunately, with mothers, and they're giving to and being there to support their children to the point that it comes to a health or a mental health or a financial cost to the mother, so that, you know, she just gets in this loop of giving. And certainly beautiful and valuable and necessary. But if it comes to the point where you're giving so much of yourself that you have less, you know, that you're taking an unfair toll, then that's not a good place to be. And if that's you at work, and if you're, you know, if that's any of us at work, when we're showing up and we just continue to give and give until, you know, we put ourselves in a situation where we can't give as much anymore, then that's not good for anybody.
eventually you give and you can't give anymore. You give until
That's
there's
right.
nothing left.
Yeah, I talked with an organization. It was a church over in Africa, and they were talking about how they'll always do something, you know, to be of service. And one time this family came and they hadn't had any food for a while, so this church gave all the rest of the money that they had to help feed and care for this family. But in doing so, they emptied their coffers, and then they couldn't afford, you know, to keep the structure of the church, so the church ended up going away. Beautiful act of, you know, contribution and caring for somebody else. But when you do it now, like, think of all the people that they can't serve and they can't care for, and the benefit or the impact that they can't make anymore because they overgave. They gave so much that it took an unrecoverable burden to the church, and that now they've shut down.
Right. So being authentic, would you say that's the first step? Becoming more authentic, connecting to yourself?
Yeah, and I think the journey to that is connecting with ourselves and understanding ourselves more. One of the other challenges, if we spend too much time not being authentic or not having the confidence to show up authentically, then it can disconnect us from ourselves so much that we don't know who we are. I talk to a lot of people that they don't know what they want. They don't know what they need. They know that something's missing. They don't know what it is. They know that their life doesn't have the fulfillment and purpose, but they don't even know what would bring a sense of fulfillment and purpose to their life because they're so disconnected, because they've been that mask, or they've shown up as that mask for so much that they're disconnected from themselves and they don't know what they want. So I think it's a journey to reconnecting with ourselves, reconnecting with our truth, spending some time giving ourselves credit where credit is due, and then identifying and harnessing the strengths that we have. So we've all made mistakes. We all have defects. We all also have innate strengths. There's things that we're good at. If we can remember those things that we're good at, and this gives us something to work with the next time that we face a challenge or an obstacle in our life, and can kind of help us lead to a better place. Another thing I often do with individuals is, let's sit down and make a list of things that you enjoy. If it's been so long because you've been so busy or so wrapped up that you haven't done something for yourself that you enjoy, maybe you felt like you didn't deserve it, or you're not giving yourself the time for it. Well, there's a lot of benefit that comes from engaging in things that we enjoy. It can be something simple, like just giving ourselves permission to go for a walk, go watch a sunset, go to the woods, go camping, go to a movie, go out to dinner. These things that bring joy into our life, they fill up our bucket and allow us to be more of ourself, and allow us, put us in a position where we can give a little bit more. If we're so disconnected, or we've been in that giving place too much or too often, or we've been hiding behind those masks and we don't even know, can't even remember what we enjoy because we're always so worried about doing things that other people enjoy, and that empties out our cup, and it empties that vessel so that we can't really show up. So reconnecting with ourselves, bringing some things that we enjoy back into our life, and then really getting a sense of that authenticity, because it's through the connection that we have to ourselves that gives us that confidence. Remembering the wins that we've had in the past, it gives us that sense of self-confidence and self-worth that also provides that permission to us to show up more authentically.
And then the next step, would that be to connect with others?
Certainly, and finding new and healthier ways
connection.
to connect with others. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so connecting with ourselves, showing up authentically, because it's when we show up authentically that we can receive the greatest benefit from that connection. It's those friends that we can be ourselves with, that we can share anything with, that we feel that greatest kind of sense of connection. It's when we can show up and be ourselves and be seen and be accepted as ourselves that we experience that greatest sense, that greatest bonding, or that greatest sense of connection with others.
I'm curious with people that have come from the military. You mentioned that deep level of connection. Are they able to find something like that? Of course, it's never going to be the same thing, but are they able to find connection or find something that's that they're happy with? I guess.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. And
Feels that way.
my advice for that is, and the kind of the pathway to regain that sense of connection is, be the connection that you want to experience with others, instead of waiting for somebody else to show up for you and demonstrate their willingness to suffer with you or to go through hard times with you. Demonstrate that to others. I think the advice of, I think it was Zig Ziglar that said it, when I remember it. He said, if you go out in the world trying to find friends, you won't find any. If you go out in the world trying to be a friend, then you'll find other friends, you'll find friends in abundance. So I think it's, be that person that you want to experience, be that sense of connection that you want to experience. It's like Mahatma Gandhi says, be the change that you want to see in the world, be that friend that you want to be. And then you'll find that level of friendship and that level of connection with others. Just sit with them. That's one of the things that kind of guided my work into working in addiction recovery, is just my capacity, I think, to sit with somebody and to at least demonstrate my understanding and my compassion for the pain and the situation that they're in. And when you can do that, when you don't come off as judgmental, or you don't come off as, if you're sharing some of the darkest or, most fearful secrets or things about yourself with me, and I'm accepting of it, then that helps foster a sense of comfort. And through that, the tighter bonds can form. So going out and demonstrating that your level of willingness to be there with somebody, to suffer with them, to show up when in their time of need, I think demonstrates or frees other people that are willing to, or that want to kind of show up and do that for you.
I was listening to someone talk about this subject, and one thing he said was he's talking about making friends in a new place, and he said, just go first. I think it's kind of similar. That's what you're saying. Like, go
Yeah.
first. Ask them to come over after work for the barbecue. Um, like you're saying, um, be first when something happens in their life and you want to like help them out and offer them the drive. That that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Be the
Yeah, be
friend
that thing
instead
that
of
you want to
looking for the
experience in
friend.
the world. If you want more friendships, then then be that friend. And to your point, yeah, invite people over, invite people out to do things. Just if you got to be the one that sparks it. What I find is that the energy that we feel and the thoughts that we feel, we tend to create in the environment around us. So if we're thinking that everybody's thinking nasty things about us and everybody, nobody wants to be our friend and nobody's kind, then that tends to be what we'll experience, whether it's through our cognitive bias that we create or whether it's just through that energy that we're putting out there. If we go out and one of the things I try to do all the time whenever I'm out is, or engaging with somebody is just stop and just look them in the eye and just have a friendly, like, hello or connection. If you're standing in line for something to get a coffee and it's your turn and you come up, then just, hey, how are you doing? And not just make it, these words that we say in passing and then, give me my double espresso, but just seeing somebody, you can foster that sense of connection by providing that connection first. But when you just, you know, create that space, create that moment where you're like, hey, look, you're a human being and I'm a human being. Let's experience a little sense of connection here. I'm not just here to use you to get what I want, bring my food to me or prepare my coffee, but hey, man, let's just have this a little moment here. And it's so beautiful the way that people react to that, respond, very quickly. It might be uncomfortable for a second because they're like, what's this guy saying or doing? He's acting weird. But then quickly they recognize, like, oh, wow, no, let's enjoy this moment, this little connection, this person that sees me as a person. And then you see their eyes light up or they see a little smile or they, you just see them or feel them relax a little bit. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to experience. So offering that, being that person that shows up in that way, then you'll find other people, showing up in that way too.
It's so refreshing because 90%, 99% of people are just like, yeah, can I get this? Thank you.
That's
Blah, blah,
right.
blah. See you later.
Right. So it all becomes transactional. I mean, we're humans. Everything shouldn't be transactional. We can share an experience.
I think probably with social media, that's kind of been, that's increased.
I think so.
Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it certainly affects our attention and our ability to engage. And yeah, it is a very transactional thing when you just sit there and, there's, yeah, getting whatever you want or, or just, really your mind's disengaging. I've heard this term called doom scrolling where you just sit there and you just kind of
Yeah.
keep scrolling through your social media and, it's just mind numbing and it disconnects you from yourself and disconnects you, and the more that we disconnect from ourselves, and I think that affects our ability to connect more with others as well.
For sure. And anytime there's dead space or dead time, like you're waiting in line, a lot of people look at their phone. It's like that could be saying hello to the person next to you and
Right.
making a connection.
So we wrap back to, how we started this discussion about my understanding of addiction. It manifests in any behavior that a person gets temporary relief or pleasure. They crave it. They get temporary relief or pleasure from it. Yet it creates a negative cost or a consequence. Well, maybe that consequence is that the connection that you're having. Sometimes, the connection that you're having with yourself or the connection you're having with others. If we feel that we can't spend 2 minutes alone without a phone, without, going through it or going to the bathroom without our phone or sitting for 5 minutes, waiting for something without our phone, we're also disconnecting from ourselves. Are we disconnecting from what we're thinking, what fears we have, what we're worried about? Maybe what good ideas that we have, what inspiration might come up, and we're certainly disconnecting from that opportunity to be there and experience a human experience with others around us.
Right. No, it's a shame too because we're all addicted, but we know we shouldn't be addicted. But
In that sense, yeah.
we don't know what we're missing.
And I think
Our abilities
the
or
pathway
relationships we
beyond
need
that is
more.
just an awareness. Yeah, I mean, just having that awareness, not to create more shame when we sit down and we're doom scrolling, but just creating an awareness that, oh, maybe there is some things out there that I'm missing, or maybe some things could be different or better, or what am I avoiding? What am I not willing to look at in myself? What are some things, maybe some things that I could correct? There's some little changes that I can make that I'm not seeing because I'm just allowing my attention to go somewhere else and be distracted.
So connection to others, and then the third part is meaning, right? That's usually how you
Yeah,
sort of go
connection,
through.
authenticity, and then meaning. And I think, by building that connection to ourselves first and understanding our sense of worth and the value that we have and that permission to show up and be authentic so we can really benefit from those connections that we're having with others, then yeah, very important to find that sense of meaning for a lot of reasons. As I already mentioned, our sense of meaning provides our capacity in many ways at many times to endure the hard and challenging times that we face. So providing that sense of meaning, ensuring that we have a sense of meaning. Now, this might be with our vocation, it might be with things that we're doing maybe outside of work, but having a strong sense of meaning, and connecting with the meaning of the things that we're doing. So connecting with how important it is, or the sense of meaning that we can get either from the relationships that we're in, from the contributions that we're making in the community, from our role as a parent, whatever that is, just really connecting with that sense of meaning helps us overcome and some of those challenging or the frustrating times that might come up with it.
Hmm. So how do we find, this is like deep philosophical questions for Garrett, how do we find a deep sense of meaning?
So I think it's one way to do it simply is to start with bringing that joy back into our life. So I understand joy as an emotion that comes up when we're doing something that brings the greatest sense of pleasure. And if we can identify those things where we feel that joy, maybe where we're kind of swept away, we feel we're in a sense of flow, we feel, happiest about our situation, then these can be keys or indicators on where we can find that greatest sense of meaning. Those things that help us feel alive in the moment can be indicators of where we'll get that greatest sense of purpose in our life. And with that sense of meaning, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to meaning. It's not, not just having that direction or having that thing that you enjoy in your life, but I understand meaning is the pathway to eudaimonic happiness. So there's many kinds or many manifestations of happiness, some in hedonic sense of happiness, those things that, that make us feel good in the moment, those things that, I'm happy when I'm doing this or I'm engaged in this thing. There's another pathway to happiness, the eudaimonic happiness, which comes from our sense of meaning, which is a more enduring sense of happiness. It's the happiness that we have during the pursuit of something. It's the happiness that we have when we feel that we're being fully engaged or doing something that, comes back to that sense of meaning, that meaningfulness. But if we want to experience that more joy and a greater sense of happiness in your life, even in the midst of the struggle or while you're going through the struggle, then doing something with a strong sense of meaning can be the pathway to that.
So the things you do where you feel alive in the moment that bring you happiness, that you're most engaged with, that are positive, obviously. Would you say maybe that you're called to as well? Would you say that's part of it? Like maybe not,
That can be it.
you
That
wouldn't
can be
use
like
that language, but like something that's
internal
like
signal,
calling
yeah,
you.
that you feel. Certainly. And I do a lot of work with nonprofits and in charities. And I wrote a short book called Charity, the Gifts of Giving. And in that, I talk about doing the thing that gives you that greatest kind of return. So, there's a time in my life where I considered myself a serial giver. And by that, I mean, I would support different causes, different nonprofits. Somebody would ask for a donation for, X, Y, and Z. And I'd give some money or support in some way that I could. And what I realized was if I can find the thing that kind of pulls at my heartstrings the most, find one thing that I'm most passionate about, find one thing that I feel the greatest sense of joy when I'm contributing to it, well, then not only is it going to provide a greater return for me, like I feel like I'm making a difference in something that's, that's most meaningful, but it's also going to in turn provide the greatest net benefit or net good for that cause that I'm supporting. So there's many different forms of need and suffering in the world. There's many fantastic organizations that are doing things to ease suffering or bring greater prosperity or joy to people's lives. What's something that's touched you, or what's something that really resonates with you? And this is, so if we can identify that and then just focus our efforts on that one thing. For everybody, it might be something different. For some people, it's, dealing with animals. For some people, it's medical research or a certain thing. Maybe cancers touch your life, or maybe some, cognitive disease or something has affected somebody in your life. and that seems the most meaningful. Well, focusing in on that and making a contribution there. For me, I feel a huge calling to serve the global water crisis. So I've had an opportunity as a military pilot to fly around and see certainly some beautiful places in the world, but also some of the most destitute and some of the most impoverished communities. And when I realized, or when I learned that nearly 1 billion people on the planet don't have readily access to safe, clean drinking water, and how much pain and suffering was created because of that, it's not just a sense of thirst, but it can be, the dehydration, malnutrition, childhood education. There's so many other issues that are created from a lack of clean drinking water. I felt called to, all right, if I can make a contribution in the world, if I can help provide somebody a safe, clean drinking water, provide that to a community, then I'm providing, a sense of hope and a sense of potential for things to get better and for things to change. So when I saw all the ways that somebody could benefit or a community could benefit from having this one most basic human need for safe, clean drinking water, it kind of called me into that. So I've since focused a lot of my time and attention and support to serving the global water crisis, because when I do that, I feel the greatest sense of return.
Right. That's awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah, like it's almost like giving life. I guess it makes sense. Like if there's no water, it affects everything.
Right. So that's something I feel called to, but I certainly encourage anybody, if there's some cause or something that you feel most called to, then find some way to support that. And instead of, as I was in the past, a serial giver and just wasn't really focusing my impact anywhere, find something that kind of means the most to you, and focus your effort, or focus your what they say, your time, talents, and your treasure in helping that cause.
And then you mentioned as well, so there's kind of like a macro meaning and then there's a micro meaning in terms of like micro being the stuff you do every day.
Mm.
That's important part too, you found.
Oh, absolutely. And just doing things that are good for us. And this comes back to having that sense of self-worth and that sense of from the connection that we have. But yeah, just doing little things. And so one of the exercises I'll have people go through is make a list of 20 things that you enjoy, simple things that you enjoy, things that you can do spontaneously, maybe some things that you got to plan out, and then just being intentional about bringing some of those things back in your life. So when you do have a moment, if you're so disconnected from those things that you enjoy and you haven't done some things for yourself in so long, and it can be hard when you have a moment like, all right, what can I do right now? And we might lose that moment. But if we're intentional about it and we create a list of things that we enjoy, and we have some things that we can recall the time that the time that we can engage in that. So I highly encourage people to think of simple things. So think of things that you can do free, think of things that you can do spontaneously, think of things that you can do with other people. And then, if it's things that you need to plan, then try to plan 1 or 2 things a month. And if it's some simple things that you can do spontaneously, then just create a short list and have it kind of readily available, either on your phone or hang it on the wall, or keep a list in your journal, so that when you have that opportunity, it's a slow, Friday afternoon, or you find, maybe you had some plans and they fell through. Now you get in there and do something that you enjoy. And remembering that, don't just grab your phone and doom scroll until the time's gone,
Yeah.
but do something that brings that joy and brings that light back into your life.
It really sounds like you're giving people hope.
I think, yeah. I mean, and we all deserve that. I mean, that's what can kind of drive us forward. I mean, that's why we continue to engage and lean into things and make that contribution or make that impact and continue to get the most from the life experience. There's so many things out there working against us, and there's so many things that can hold us back or pull us down. We can be intentional about it. We can support one another, and we can lean into that, and we can get the most, from this life experience, and make the greatest, be the best energy, or be that best version of ourselves that we show up and connect with, and impact other people. So we can raise the tide to raise all the ships.
That's awesome. And then that kind of goes back into what you're saying earlier about the military, how hyper competitive it is and how we're always trying to be better and climb the ladder and everything. It's like finding a new way to be self-improving all the time.
Sure. And knowing that you
But
deserve it. And that comes back to that connection with yourself and your sense of self-worth. And Hey, and that's, that's always one of my parting messages is regardless of how you feel about yourself right now in this moment, if you're in a dark place, know that you are lovable and acceptable just as you are. I don't care who it is that's hearing this, but that's the truth, that you're lovable and acceptable just as you are. Maybe you've made some mistakes. We've all made mistakes. Maybe you've caused some heartache. We've all caused some heartache, but that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to have joy and peace and hope in your life. And there's tools and there's paths to kind of move beyond that and to get to a better place. So if you're stuck, if you feel like something's missing, then lean into that and know that you're deserving of being and experiencing a better version of your life and a better version of you.
It's a great message. On that note, where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in checking out that TEDx talk, you can go to unspokentrauma.vet, and it's a 10.5 minute talk, and it really talks about looking at the transition from military service and through that lens of connection, authenticity, and meaning. For anybody, if you know somebody that struggled with addiction or some mental health challenges and you want a positive psychology driven approach to getting to a better place, you can check out valiantpath.vet. And if you want to experience some simple exercises or some simple daily practices that you can do for a few days, if you feel stuck, if you feel disconnected, if you just feel like you're not showing up as the version of yourself that you want to be, then Maddie, I've got a free gift for any of your listeners. You can go to thewarriorreset.com and check that out. And there I provide it's a 10-day challenge, and I provide 4 of the most efficacious and most powerful, quickest to provide some benefit exercises or daily practices that you can do. All of them to get combined take less than 15 minutes a day. So it's something very short, very simple, but it will help provide an emotional, mental, even a spiritual sense of reset in your life. So if you feel like something's missing or you feel a little stuck, you're not sure what to do, you want to change some things up, then check that out, and you'll certainly experience a huge benefit and a huge shift in your life.
That's awesome, man. Thank you very much. I'll definitely share all those links in the description of this video. If anyone wants to find them. Just really quick before we hop off, you mentioned spiritual there. We didn't necessarily specifically touch on that, but could you talk a little bit about that? I find that interesting. Like, where does sort of the spiritual connection fit into the this path?
Yeah, I think spirituality, I understand it just as a person's understanding of how they're connected to something bigger than themselves. So the more that and I think this comes back to that sense of connection and that self-value, if we increase that, then we can increase our connection with the kind of the truth that's around us and our connection with something that's bigger than ourselves. Through spirituality, I think we can find a sense of meaning. Sometimes it provides that context for us to find a sense of meaning in our life, and through that meaning, we get that eudaimonic happiness. We get the capacity to endure suffering. I think it's all tied together. So for everybody, their spirituality might show up in a different way, be defined in some kind of different way, different values, different beliefs. But whatever that spirituality is, the more that we can kind of lean into that and understand our role or our place in the grand scope of things, or in the context of something that's bigger than ourselves, then this can it's kind of a closed loop and can come back and fuel our greater sense of connection, our greater sense of meaning, self-worth, value, and our deserving of that authenticity, that showing up authentically and experiencing joy in our life.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much, Garrett, for coming on.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, been my pleasure.
I really like what you're doing, and I think your principles are very helpful and will be helpful for anyone. I find them very helpful. So thanks again, and I wish you all the best of luck doing this. And
thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. We'll see you later. Thank you very much. Everyone, all this stuff is in the description. Chat later.
Be well.